Good day and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I'm your host, the voice of reason. So I wanted to do an update on the ongoing conflict in Afghanistan and a major development that has just occurred within the last day or two. But the last U.S. forces have departed the largest air base in the region and headquarters of U.S. operations inside of Afghanistan, and that is Bagram Air Base. So this vast complex, as you can see on my map, was home to a significant amount of U.S. forces in terms of both air power, helicopter transport assets, and military units as well. Very large, sprawling base that is home to detention facilities and other command and control facilities, has been turned over to the Afghan National Army. So what will be left to defend Afghanistan in terms of foreign support after the departure of those forces from Bagram? So what is the United States going to have left inside of Afghanistan? Well, really the only overt force structure will be roughly a battalion-sized element of about 640 U.S. troops, probably Marines, based in the capital of Kabul. And this unit will hold a mission to be responsible for the protection of the fortified embassy area, and then obviously if the Taliban were to attempt a direct assault on Kabul and threaten the embassy staff and other embassies as well, the United States would need enough force in the area to get those embassy personnel to the airfield and the Kabul International Air Base airport, and remove themselves from the country, if that in fact would occur. Now, that is really up to the United States. The United States has the ability to not let the Taliban regain control of Kabul. The U.S., under its air dominance strategy, especially in regards to distributed lethality, has the ability to institute what you would call a no-drive zone. And any vehicles that would be moving towards Kabul, and the Taliban would have to move in some form of columns of technical type vehicles and trucks to amass enough forces to start to infiltrate into Kabul, and the United States would have the ability to prevent that. And the concept of distributed lethality is basically anything that flies in terms of aircraft flown by the United States Air Force has the ability to sense and shoot. So for instance, this really kind of focuses on the C-130 and tanker fleet. But these C-130s, while their primary mission would be to move forces around, act as refuelers, at the same time, these C-130s have the ability to launch ordnances, primarily Hellfire missiles or the smaller Griffin missile. And these C-130s have the ability, they have targeting pods, targeting sensors, FLIRs, what have you, and then obviously they're outfitted with those Griffin missiles where when they are flying over an area, they can very easily engage and destroy ground targets, and that is a tremendous asset that the United States has in terms of the distributed lethality concept, When you think about the U.S., many people think about F-22 Raptors, F-35 Lightning aircraft. You think about F-15s, B-52 bombers, B-1B bombers, B-2 bombers. Yes, all that is part of that force construct, but at the same time, there's that other element of distributed lethality that allows the United States to do quite a bit of sensing and shooting, so to speak, in terms of these other aircraft platforms that can engage and destroy targets. And that is widespread right now throughout the U.S. Air Force as well. But any entry into Kabul by the Taliban could be stopped by the United States with not a great effort. But at the same time, does the United States want to continue operations inside of Afghanistan and be perceived as in what they're calling now a forever war? And I would have to say no, absolutely not. On the other hand, I would also say that the Afghan National Defense Forces, a lot, this is really kind of, they're comparing and contrasting in terms of now versus what happened when the Najibullah regime was overthrown on the exit of Soviet forces. But the Afghan army that exists now, the Afghan armed forces that exist now, is quite a bit different than the Afghan National Army that existed when the Najibullah regime fell. And obviously he was executed and dragged through the streets and hung. So that incident has to weigh heavily on the minds of the current leadership of the Afghan military and the Afghan leadership. But at the same time, again, the Afghan military is in a different situation in terms of capability than what occurred on the exit of Soviet forces. The Afghan security forces still has a measure of air assets. They can conduct precision strikes a bit without fast-moving jets. They have smaller Cessna and Tawaco type aircraft that have the ability to precisely sense and engage targets as well. Not a huge number of these aircraft, but they can do adequate calls for fire and calls for fire support around Kabul and other strategically important locations inside of Afghanistan. They also have their commando battalions, which have been, for the last several years, been trained, or well, decades actually, been trained by U.S. trained and equipped special forces, and still retain a very good capability to blunt any moves by the Taliban into Kabul or other areas as well. And so far, we haven't really seen the Taliban show the capability yet to take over large cities. That has not occurred yet. Could it occur in the near future? Sure, possibly. We'll probably see the first city to fall. Could be Kunduz here on my map, depending on the efforts by the Afghan army to maintain control of some of these cities. But while I wouldn't completely eliminate the chance of a rapid advance by the Taliban, I don't think the Afghan National Army is in that great of danger of complete collapse, so to speak. I do think it has much more capability than when the Soviet-led regime fell, and then obviously they're looking back at history too. So many of these individuals will be fighting for their lives in terms of what could occur if the Taliban do come into power. But that would be a tremendous political blow for any U.S. administration, and I mean any U.S. administration. Now, whether the current Biden administration is going to be the administration that allows Afghanistan to fall back into the hands of the Taliban, that's a question only those inside of the White House could really answer. But the capability to stop the Taliban from entering Kabul is present. And that could be negated very quickly in terms of those forces, those Taliban forces being able to move and secure locations inside of Afghanistan. There are also still obviously elements of the Central Intelligence Agency operating inside of Afghanistan. There are still high valued targets that the United States wishes to eliminate inside of Afghanistan in terms of certain components of the Taliban, and then obviously the threat of ISIS could raise its head as well. But obviously there are still clandestine operations occurring. I do not doubt that there are clandestine special operations forces still in country and still able to support the Afghan military. While not overtly, those assets are there, are present, and could be used to support and prop up the Afghan armed forces in threat of a total military collapse. But again, really wanted to talk about what occurred in Bagram in terms of that huge airbase now being vacated by U.S. personnel, and now just over 600 U.S. forces remain in case the fortified embassy needs to be evacuated. And I'd have to say that I, I don't believe, or I would say I would like to believe that the United States would not let that occur in terms of allowing Kabul to fall to the Taliban. But we'll have to really kind of wait and see what occurs. But again, I wouldn't discount the current Afghan military. I mean, it's obviously not a top tier force, but I do believe it has better capabilities that exist now than the fall of the Soviet-led regime before. So this could take some time before things finally come to a head and start to actually start to dissolve in terms of the Afghan military. But we'll continue to monitor the situation and report. Have a good day, everybody.